All right, welcome to a Swiss Miss Gaming tier list for NCA. So NCA just came out again, and we're all very excited for that as I mute my phone, which I should have done first, but what can you do? So I'm pretty excited that NCA is back. I'm going to quickly go over all the units and kind of where I would rank them in a tier list setup. The way I have my tiers defined is as follows. S tier, these are units that are extremely powerful and that every army would like to take. Um, I don't know if every army has an S tier unit. So, these are things that are just exceptionally powerful that you should always consider taking. A tier units, these are very powerful and faction defining units. They will win you games and they will often make your way into your lists. Sometimes they compete with each other, right? Like sometimes you might have a tag that's an A tier and a really cool heavy infantry that's an A tier. You're not always going to take both of them, but they both are that very powerful faction defining type of unit. B tier, these are units that make the cut pretty often. They're solid choices that are often in your list. You're maybe not the most excited about them. C tier, these are your supporting units. We'll talk about a few of them today. They can also be a counter unit. They are likely not very exciting units, but sometimes they're necessary additions to your army. And then there's D tier. These are either very, very specific niche role pieces or like a very hard counter to a very specific thing, or they're just kind of a below average unit. That's not to say you shouldn't use them because often people don't know how to handle these less seen units and they can just be a lot of fun. So, but I do think that you should be aware that there might be some cost to taking these units. Another thing to note is I've not thought about this ahead of time. We're kind of doing this live. So, if you have any serious disagreements, please leave it in the comments. And it's going to take some playtesting to really figure out what we think works and what doesn't. So, first, Auxilia. I love Auxilia. These are your original Pano warband before we kind of got a few warbands. But the combination of a basic light infantry and the heavy flamethrower Oxbot is very powerful, deceptively so. These guys can kind of win you games if your opponent deploys poorly and they can go on a little rampage. And they got some changes that are really worth noting. So, the 15-point forward observer one now has a submachine gun instead of a combi rifle. That's okay. That's not great, to be honest. But it's really worth remembering that it has a deployable repeater, and now the Oxbot is also a forward observer and also has a deployable repeater, as well as a flash pulse. So that's actually really, really cool for a lot of different reasons. So huge fan of that. And then you also have the Nano Pulsar +1 burst combi rifle one. I really like these forward observers. They can push up, complete objectives, and murder. And you don't care if they die. It's 15 points or 18 points. I think these guys are really solid. I actually kind of consider them faction defining. And for 15 points, they provide a lot to your army. So we're going to start off with a bang. A tier. Fusiliers. So Fusiliers are good. The core link team changes have affected them pretty dramatically, I would say. But there's something to be said about, a missile and a combi rifle, just throwing two missile dice at things. Overall, I'd say they're fine at this point. Whereas before, I probably would have put them in B tier, with the old fire team rules. Today's day and age, they're fine. They're C. You're going to take them sometimes, but you're not super excited about them. Okay, Blade Ops. So these guys are really cool, and there's lots of options. A parachutist engineer with decoy is really good. Little expensive though. Yeah, kind of generally speaking, these guys are good, especially if you want an engineer. Tack aware, mimetism, they're good. But they are just 1 wound. So I'm kind of mixed on them. I think they are situationally very good, but you're not always going to be interested in taking them. But I think that they are more exciting than your C tier type units. They can do a lot more work than many of the C tier units, at least more often. So I think they're good. They're solid. I think they have some good fire team options, if I remember. So the blades can peer. They're wild cards that can peer with Fusiliers or bolts. So peering with a bolt is actually really useful. So worth mentioning. Solid B tier unit. Very good. Blockers. I adore blockers. This 19-point hacker, like this is going to sound stupid to most other armies in the game, but Whip 13, BTS 3, hacker with firewall -3 is actually really good for this army. On top of all this other stuff, right, like sensor and discover reroll and X-Visor and Biovisor, these guys are great at discovering things and hacking. They're very much a utility piece, but a really, really useful and interesting one. And just like the blades above, they have some fire team options that are very useful. Like they can fire team with Fusiliers. And with the number of wild cards that exist in this army, you're very likely to kind of want one. So worth considering, especially if you're going to do a Fusilier fire team. And the knowledge that like you could take a Fusilier paramedic and a blocker, and now you're getting an SD bonus for either an orc or literally any of these wild cards. So, and that's very powerful. And you're getting a nice utility guy out of it. These guys are very good. Hexas had a huge, huge, huge glow up. I love what they've done with Hexas. So the Spitfire got an X-Visor and an Emerat, which I don't think they had before. The Silence Pistol +1 burst is great. Ultimately, the biggest thing here is they now have counterintelligence, which is amazing. Something to note, counterintelligence will not work in hidden deployment. At least I believe that's the case. Yes, it has to be deployed on the game table. So you can be in your MIM6 camo token, but you cannot be hidden deployed to benefit from counterintelligence. Really worth mentioning that. But that makes this killer hacker that I already used a lot in this army in previous editions even better. It's got an Emerat. The other hacker has a Panzerfaust. Like all of these are really good. Yeah, I very much am a fan of Hexas now. I used Hexas before, and that felt a little bit more grudging. It was more like a C tier, like I'm using them, they're fitting a role I need, but I don't feel like they're very successful at that role. Getting counterintelligence adds so much more to the Hexa that, yeah, I love it. Machinists. So we have to take the NCA Machinist, which costs a few extra points, and it comes with Warhorse and Shock Immune and Terrain Total. These are not very exciting benefits. 17 points. It's okay to be Warhorse, but I'm just really not that interested in this. I would actually almost consider them a D tier. Specifically because blades exist and their engineer is a little bit more expensive for like a basic engineer, but significantly better skill sets overall. And the ability to fire team if that's what you're interested in. Tech Bees. Tech Bees would change a lot from last edition. Obviously, they used to be a 5-point specialist, basically. Now they buff your tag with better dodge and gizmo kit rolls. They're good. I mean, it's a 9-point regular order that is a specialist. That's good. We like that. Not exciting. Everybody has something like this now. it's fine. Trauma docs, I feel similarly as I do with engineers, except this is your only doctor in the army because Bipandra is gone from this army, which feels like a mistake. I want to know the rationale behind that. But as the army's only doctor, 14 points is fine. You get to go in C tier. Ada. Okay. I have tried to make Ada work for a while, and I feel as though I've never really been successful with her. Important to note, I don't think she has any fire team abilities in NCA like she does in Shaw's, which is fine. The submachine gun doesn't really do what it used to. I'm not that impressed. I'm happy to be wrong because I really enjoy Ada. I think she's fun. But I really think she's D tier. I think she's fun. I think you should play with her. But I think often you won't have the points to want to spend on this package. Quinn's had a bit of a glow up. He now has a chain of command option in addition to his multi-marksman options. Warhorse is good. MSV1 is good. I think he's fine. You have other chain of command options in this army. You have other MSV1 options in this army, though not as many as you might think, because it's really one profile on the bolt, but you do have a lot of MSV2 and, of course, MSV3. I think Quinn is fine. I think he's somewhere between a B and a C. For now, I'm going to stick him at, I guess, the top of B tier. I wasn't really ordering this, but I probably should. We'll do like that for now. I think the engineer is worse than Ada. CSUs are great. These are a model that can also surprise an opponent. We don't have as much forking as we used to, right? So breaker combi rifle with a 2-burst nanopulsar is really gross. Rifle light shotgun nanopulsar is really gross. The fact that they fire a team with Fusiliers makes it a pretty inexpensive little duo that can run up and do a lot of damage. Breaker combi rifles are surprisingly good. These guys are good. Cheap. I think they're better than... I'm going to put them at top of C tier. I don't think they're the most exciting thing in the universe, but they have their role. And if you want to build to it, you can. I think Auxilia do much the same, but without having to take a Fusilier. Sacha, I don't know how to say this, Xenotech Hunters. Everybody has these. I have not yet played with them, so I don't have strong opinions either way. 6 points seems fine for a specialist that's whip 13. This is kind of your new Tech B, and I think if I put it in that perspective, it's fine. And as such, it'll be in C tier. It's not really going to win you games, although an EM grenade is always nice to threaten. Warcores are good. They are fine. Somewhere here. Now we're going to get into some of the more interesting things. Black Friars. So Black Friars have changed a little bit. Let's see. Is this accurate over here with this Blackfire FTO? Does the Blackfire FTO exist anymore? That is the question. So I'm going to assume that because there's no FTO option, it really means that any of these are fire teamable. And if that's the case, this heavy rocket launcher is very good. Their albedo went to 6 from 3. MSV2 is very good. Combat Instinct is very good. And Religious, in the context of this model, is very good. The Thunderbolt and the heavy rocket launcher are both extremely good. I really like the heavy rocket launcher. As a defensive piece in a fire team, it's very often going to be very handy. So I'm a big fan. I like them quite a bit. I think they're going to struggle to fit into as many fire teams as you want sometimes, but 22 points is fine. And it gets an extra burst multi-pistol. Like, this guy is just rocking and rolling. So, really good. The Deva. Deva Functionaries. This is a loner model from Aleph. Don't think they have any fire team options outside of a CSU fire team, which is a cute little fire team. Devas, I think, struggle from being kind of not good at anything. The one thing that they are good at is, of course, lieutenant roles, if you care about that. And their hackers are actually pretty darn good. Whip 15, BTS 3, and immune to isolated is a pretty good hacker stat line. I think they're fine. I think they're a nice utility piece that you can have. I'm not sold that you're going to want to take them very often. I'm tempted to put them in D tier. I think I've got some bias from past editions, but I think you can do it either cheaper or better. All right, bolts, my beloved bolts. Bolts are still extraordinarily good, and there are some profiles that stand out to me even more than they used to. So bolts obviously still have marksmanship, which is amazing. Warhorse also very good. A standout here is, of course, the multi-sniper with MSV1. That's a very powerful combination, especially in a fire team, getting an extra SD. So I would almost always consider these guys. The Killer Hacker and Hacker are very good. BTS 6 is awesome. And then also having a Burst 3 boarding shotgun before any fire team bonuses means if you don't have hackable targets, this is still not a bad fighter. Keeping in mind, right, you come around a corner within 8, you're hitting on 19s. Unless they have a vision mod. That is terrifying. And if it's 3 dice or even 4 dice because you have a San Diego dice, SD dice, that's amazing. You have a chain of command here. That's awesome. The missile is okay. I'm less interested in it than the sniper, especially because their point cost is basically the same. And then, of course, you've got some drop bears kicking around all these profiles. I would call these guys faction defining. They're borderline S tier. I'm thinking about giving them S tier. I think many armies would absolutely adore to have this MSV1 multi-sniper. I think it's not... I think people sometimes overestimate how good it can be. But, man, it is very good. Just looking at some of the fire team options. There's some really interesting fire team options. We'll get into that in a little bit. For now... Oh, it doesn't even want me to have S tier. There you go. So, S tier it is. I think that sometimes they're overestimated in their strength. But man, they're really good. And there's so many good profiles here. This is a reason to play this army. Hannibal is now a Neoterran mercenary team leader, which is really interesting to see. So he has a lot of useful skills. BS attack one's SD, he dodges better, he's shock immune with NWI, so he's kind of heavy infantry. He has tack awareness built in and sensor. So these are all things that you want in a fire team. And additionally, he is a wild card with access to strategic deployment, and he counts as an orc or a bolt. This is really, really cool because you can take whatever bolt you want or orc you want, or both, and strategic deploy them with a guy who's actually also very useful in combat. He also has a +1 SWIC profile here. So, multi-marksman rifle throwing 5 dice, because you can stack SD dice, is really good, it turns out. So, I really think this guy is going to show up in a lot of lists. He's not a huge point investment, right? You can only spend 26 if you want. And for a 2-wound guy, that's really good. I'm going to put him at the top of A tier. I think he won't make it into every list, but boy is he good. Uma, looking at Uma for the first time in a while. I think she suffers a little bit from the submachine gun nerf. Those profiles are not the most interesting to me. The breaker combi rifle is very scary, and an X visor breaker rifle is a very good combination. I think you're going to be more interested in other 20-point models, but I think she's totally solid. And the fire team options mean, and she does count as a bolt, by the way. You know, the fire team options mean that you can stick a breaker combi rifle in your bolt Hannibal fire team and kind of be rocking and rolling in good range band pretty quickly. So I think she's really interesting. I would kind of consider her in B tier. She's solid. She's fun. Optimate Agent Maximus. This is one that I haven't had a good amount of time to sort of parse what's going on here, because this is your sort of S2 version of Maximus. He's good at close combat, not so good at shooting. 2-ish wounds with Vita 1, NWI, and immune to arm. It does mean viral and other BTS shock weaponry will give him a bad time. He's good. I think 40 points is kind of a lot. And I feel like I'd rather do something different. So right now, I'm kind of leaning towards either D or C tier. I'll go with C for now. This is one, admittedly, I could be totally wrong on. So we'll see. And a big part of that is actually the next character, Shona. So Shona is actually shock immune and has 2 wounds, basically, with NWI. So a similar durability, right? 1 less armor, but a similar durability to Maximus. The same speed, but kind of trade some of the other CC skills for this, like the martial arts level 4, right, which is quite good this edition, with the downside of frenzy, right? So she's getting a point discount there. She is also not very good at shooting, but I don't really need her to be good at shooting. And an AP explosive CC weapon is about the best close combat weapon you can get in the game. So I have a hard time with Maximus when Shona is in this army and is a wild card. I think Shona is very good. I think solidly up here in B tier somewhere. She will fit into many fire teams. It's going to be mission dependent whether or not you want her or not. But if she connects with most any target, she's going to destroy it. So, very good. Orcs. Good old boring and reliable orcs. Orcs are great. They're inexpensive, fast, moderately tough guys. But all that said, there's only a few profiles I'm actually that interested in. And it's really these boarding shotguns with the tin bot or not tin bot. Because a burst 3 boarding shotgun tossed in a fire team, that can turn a corner and solve a problem for you, right? If there's something there with a template that you don't want your bolt or your Hannibal to walk into, you send in the orc with a shotgun. And if they're out of cover, he'll be hitting it on 20s. It's great. The heavy machine gun is fine. You've got some other gunfighters that are way going to outshine him. But all that said, I like orcs. They're fine. They're somewhere in C tier. You're going to take them sometimes, depending on the fire team that you want. Aquila Guard. They have made my boy even better. Aquila Guard, I've always struggled to justify taking in many ways because they're very expensive and had very few actual skills. So now they've got Jump 3, which is fine, ECM Hacker 3, which is great. a deactivator, which I don't really care about. But the big thing is you actually have access to both disco ballers on all the multi-marksman profiles, but also Strategos level 1 and Specialist on your lieutenant options here. Strategos level 1 is fantastic. Being a Specialist is fantastic. And that has really given this guy a big glow up to me. That said, I don't, on top of the MSV3 changes, worth mentioning, but I don't think he's quite going to break it into A tier. I think his points cost is really high, and I think you're going to struggle to fit him in every list. But I'm kind of willing to put him in A tier. I think he's faction defining. And I think Strategos especially makes it so that you can use other things while you're waiting for the right time for your Aquila Guard to do whatever it is he needs to do. It's worth mentioning too that all three of these can wildcard. So that also means that his Strategos can fuel a fire team that he's in, which is great. Moving on, my boy, the Swiss Guard. They finally did it. The crazy bastards, they did it. They made my Swiss Guard have profiles that are good at close combat. So there's two very different profiles than what existed before. We'll affectionately call them both the hacking profiles. Well, two hacking profiles. There's a third one, but whatever. Yeah, so there's two profiles with martial arts level 1 and CC 21 on the Swiss Guard. This is not that great of a CC stat, but I just love that it exists. One, they both have forward deployment. One is a killer hacker. The other is not. The killer hacker is really interesting. AP submachine gun, good CC stats, Pulsar, Flammensphere, Tinbot 3 with BTS 6. This is a solid killer hacker that can stealth and camo state and impersonation state to exactly where he needs to be. So, big fan there. The other huge glow up is on the Swiss Miss himself. This model got +1 SD on his missile launcher and picked up a Pulsar. This makes this guy an extremely disgusting aero piece that a lot of armies are not going to like seeing, and its mere existence changes how you have to deploy and play against this army. A single Noctifer, right, is terrifying. But usually you can overpower it through weight of dice and some vision mods. This guy being BS-15 and getting a 2-dice missile is extraordinarily good. So I am a huge, 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 huge fan of the Swiss Guard. Whatever, he's going in S tier. I'm going to put him at the top of S tier right now because I am so excited for this change. I think the missile and the hacker, the killer hacker especially, are going to be two extremely useful profiles. The Ulan has also changed significantly this edition. So now, before you kind of had a heavy machine gun and a Feuerbach with extra burst. That was cool. That was awesome. Now you have a Spitfire heavy rocket launcher with extra burst with AP on everything profile, and a extra burst Feuerbach Blitzen Panzerfaust profile. I think this Spitfire profile is fantastic. A heavy rocket launcher with an extra burst that's AP is devastating. And an AP Spitfire is always good. These guys also picked up Warhorse, which is great. It's a camo tag with great guns. So the one thing you gotta be careful of, Arm 6, he does not like to get hit. So do be aware of that. So at 80 points for Armor 6, I'm a little bit dubious in some ways, but it's certainly faction defining. You're always going to have to worry about this. I'm going to stick it at the... it's a camo tag. We'll stick it at the bottom of S tier today. I'm really excited to play this. I always love the Ulan, and I think the Spitfire heavy rocket launcher is going to slap. All right, the Squalus Mark II. The Squalus Mark II is solid. It's fine. It's an orc of tags. It's light. It's relatively inexpensive, and it hits pretty darn hard. I don't think you should ever take this grenade launcher one. I'm not super sold on that. But the multi-heavy machine gun NCO or the multi-marksman rifle are both incredibly solid, incredibly dangerous models. They're very good. But that said, I think they're fine. I think it's an exciting little tag. But I think it's competing with some other models. And ultimately, it doesn't have any vision states. I'd kind of rather pay, an extra, 14 points to get the Ulan. The best Ulan is 80. 66 for this. I think I'd find the points. And then the last tag we have is Maximus. Maximus as a tag is a little bit more interesting to me than Maximus as an S2. Because he's a close combat oriented tag, but he still has good ballistic skill. And the Thunderbolt +2 burst is kind of good enough. And his operator version is also pretty good. It's fine. I do think this is competing with the Ulan, but I think in some missions you're going to be pretty excited to have a big beefcake that can walk up and AP DACC things to death, be it objectives or enemies. So this is another one I'm not quite sure where to put it. I think with my play style, I like the Ulan more. And I definitely I like the Squalus Mark II more. I think he's in that ballpark. He might even be in C tier. I'm really not sure. But he's at least very interesting. All right, the Garuda. So the Garuda is our combat jumper. And I think a lot of people undervalue the Garuda. I think most people aren't aware that it exists in this army, so when it shows up, it can actually do a lot of work. The boarding shotgun chain colt's really cute with mimetism. The combi rifle flash pulse is also really cute. I think a lot of modern combat jumpers are overshadowing it. It's 8.2 movement speed is hilarious though. Yeah, wow. He's very fast. I think it's good. I think the 20-point forward observer can win you games. That said, I think it's just a C. I think it's fine. It's either top of C or bottom of B, maybe? I'm not really sure. I think they're good. I think the fact that this army can do some Evo hacker things, because of course you've got bulleteers, I think that gives it a little bit of a boost. But I think you're not always going to take it. I think sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't. So I think that makes it a C tier. It's going to depend on your army and how many of these other forward observers / specialists that you have in the midfield you really need. Bulleteers are fantastic. Spitfire is great. Heavy shotgun with an extra burst is great. These things can really abuse people. They're fantastic. At the points cost that they have, they're very, very, very dangerous. This army does have a lot of apex gunfighters, though, and I think it will be fighting for its place among them. But I think it's very good. I'm going to stick it in the middle of B tier. Clippers. So a lot of the hackers I've been excited about have been killer hackers. And like, I'm just not necessarily certain that I want to play a guided game. There are some pitchers in this army, with this, which is worth mentioning. We'll talk about the locusts in a little bit. But I'm not entirely certain I want to be playing the guided missile game with this particular army. And I don't think they have good fire team abilities. I'm not really seeing anything. So I'm going to put them in situational. I'm going to put them at the bottom of C tier because they're not bad. They're just not... They're not doing anything all that interesting. Flashhole spots are Fugazi flashbots. So these guys I'm actually going to stick in S tier for the only reason is that they're AVA 3. And I think every army in the game would love to have that available to them. You're almost always going to be taking one or more flashbots to generate orders for you. And the fact that you can take 3 of them is huge. Mulebots, you have Bulleteers, you have the Garuda. They're fine. If you're playing a game that you think you need them, you can take them, but they're not that exciting. Palbots are also fine. They can pair with your blades, they can pair with your doctor, they can pair with your engineer, but 2 of those options, both the machinist and the blade ops, are often going to be in fire teams. So I'm going to put these in C because I think they're just so situational. I might even bump them down to D just because I want my blade op in a fire team. I'm not super excited about the engineer, generally speaking, and I'm definitely not excited about the doctor either. So, but they're 3 points. All right, the Pathfinder. Pathfinder is great because we have a 17-point tack-aware option with Sensor. Sensor is a great skill, helps you discover things. And importantly, Pathfinders can be in any fire team, up to 2 of them. And that is really quite a nice piece of tech to have available. They are not the most exciting thing in the universe. You're not going to take them every time, but you are very happy to have them. Peacemakers. Peacemakers are super good. They forward deploy. They have an obnoxious Oxbot that does obnoxious Oxbot things. One of them has Mine Layer to drop shock mines. You can have extra burst boarding shotguns, or you can have heavy shotguns. Like, they're all good. They're all there. They provide they potentially provide significant resistance to your opponent pushing up the field. All that said, they are a little bit expensive and somewhat vulnerable to the enemy. Now, you do have a lot of hackers, and the fact that these are repeaters gives you some midfield presence with your repeater network that can be very useful. Peacemakers are incredibly solid. I like them quite a bit. I feel like 1 is almost always a good decision. I'm going to put them near the top end of B tier. All right, we're getting down to the last few. Sierra bots. So this is your TR bot. Very standard, very normal. AVA 2 in this army, and of course you have the Thunderbolt option. They're fine. I think you have other defensive pieces that outshine them significantly. And of course, offensively, you have many more pieces. I'm going to put them at the bottom of C tier. They're fine. I don't think you're very excited to take them. But they exist. And then we have the Locust. So the Locust was kind of a model I took by necessity in the past. Again, this army historically has had issues completing the objectives. But now we actually have camouflage, even if it is limited, on this hacker. So that is very, very, very interesting and something I would consider taking quite often. The other hackers are very good as well. I like the killer hacker. Generally speaking, I like the killer hacker just because it gave you marker state when you didn't have it before. But I am now more interested in this regular hacker here. That said, 34 points is kind of a lot. This is a model that is kind of okay at everything, right? It's a BS-12 MIM-6 gunfighter, which is good with a good gun. But yeah, overall it's okay. It did pick up surprise attack, which is nice. It means all of the, like if you're a killer hacker and you go into cyber mask, you will get the benefit. So that's good. Bang bomb's also fine, although if you're dodging with a locust, things have gone wrong. Generally speaking, these guys are good but expensive. I think you'll take them. I think sometimes they'll work for you and sometimes they won't. I'm going to put them at the top of C tier. Ooh. And then last is the Red Eye. I have not yet played with the Red Eye. I don't own the model yet, so I'm not sure exactly how I feel about them. Overall, they're fast, MIM-6 gunfighters, but they don't get cover. So they're closer to a MIM-3 gunfighter with downside. At 45 points, they're structure 2 and they're armor 6, so they're tough. I think they're okay. Fast, relatively tough with an okay gun setup is fine. Aerial is fine. Like, it's a good skill. It does make them hard to hide sometimes, especially at silhouette 7. Obviously silhouette 7 going prone is not often a thing, but yeah, can't cautious move. It's fine. It's an expensive 2-wound bike. I feel like I have other gunfighters I'm more interested in than this. Again, a bullet here is going to do it better, especially if you have an Evo bot, because it can take cover and it is the same range gun. It's just a little more delicate, a lot more delicate. I'll put it in C tier. I think it's fine. Okay, so here's my final tier list. Let me move the... I see there was a flaw with having this here. Let me move this out of the way for you so you can see the final list. But yeah, this is overall where I rank things. I'll think about. I just for the first time added the actual profiles here for you to see. They're a little bit in the way. Maybe I'll move it down to here next time. But yeah, so there's the final list. I really think your Swiss Guard, your bolts, your Ulan, and your Flashbot are the best thing in this army. And you're going to be taking one or more of these in every game. Hannibal, Auxilia, and Aquila Guard seem very good and very faction defining. And then you have a solid cadre of B tier things that you can slot into your army as you need. And honestly, your C tier stuff is fine. None of this stuff is really bad. So let me know what you think. If I got anything really, really wrong, please let me know. I'm happy to try them out for sure and learn where I was wrong. So thanks for listening. Have a good one.